Why would someone betray the person who trusts them the most? Why, even knowing it will deeply hurt their partner, do they still take the risk and cross that line? We often believe infidelity is just about morals, values, or a lack of love. But the truth is that, beyond all of that, the brain plays a much bigger role in those moments than we realize. Neuroscience shows us that cheating isn't just a conscious decision. It's also chemistry, impulses, and neural circuits shaped by years of evolution and experience. In this video, you'll discover what really happens in the mind of someone who cheats, why they feel what they feel, what the negative consequences are in their brain, and what you can learn to understand, and even prevent, this kind of betrayal. Welcome, neurocurious friends. Let's start by understanding what happens in the brain during infidelity. When someone cheats, their brain isn't calm, and it isn't fully aware of all the consequences. What's really happening inside is a chemical and emotional storm that often overpowers their ability to think clearly in the moment. First, the brain's reward system lights up. Dopamine, the neurotransmitter of pleasure and motivation, surges in response to novelty, mystery, and risk. Every secret message, every forbidden glance, every furtive meeting triggers more dopamine, creating a rush of euphoria and attraction that can feel almost addictive. This activation of the reward circuit is so strong that it clouds risk perception and makes the person minimize the real consequences. Meanwhile, the amygdala, the part of the brain that detects danger, also activates, but here's the twist. Instead of stopping the behavior, it actually makes the risk feel exciting. This is similar to what thrill seekers experience, gamblers, extreme sports enthusiasts, where adrenaline mixes with dopamine, and the brain interprets it as exhilarating and stimulating. At the same time, the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that reasons, plans, and evaluates long-term consequences, is partially suppressed by that chemical cocktail of dopamine, adrenaline, and cortisol. That's why, in the heat of the moment, the person may feel like they're in control, like they can handle it, or even that there's not much to lose, until reality hits later. This temporary imbalance between the emotional and rational systems explains why, for many people, cheating feels almost inevitable in the moment, even though guilt, regret, and consequences follow afterward. In short, under the influence of these chemicals, the brain prioritizes immediate gratification over long-term well-being. It's a biological impulse that, while it doesn't excuse the betrayal, helps explain how it happens. And then comes the inevitable, painful question: how can someone say they love me and still do this? As contradictory as it seems, neuroscience and psychology show that love and betrayal can coexist, at least in the mind of the one who cheats. That's because romantic love and the drive for novelty don't always come from the same brain circuits. On one hand, long-term love is associated with oxytocin and vasopressin, hormones that strengthen attachment, commitment, and emotional safety. On the other, sexual desire and the craving for excitement are more tied to dopamine and testosterone, which are highly responsive to novelty and the forbidden. So, how can someone still feel deep attachment, affection, and a sense of belonging to their partner, while at the same time feeling attraction or desire for someone else? This doesn't necessarily mean they love their partner any less emotionally. It means their reward system is responding to external stimuli that don't always have to do with love itself. On top of that, infidelity is often less about the partner and more about the person who cheats. It can be an unconscious search for validation, to feel desired or attractive. It can be a way to escape emotions like stress, boredom, or feeling stuck in life, or even a response to unresolved wounds or insecurities that have nothing to do with the current relationship. Then there's the illusion of control. The brain convinces itself it can handle the situation, keep both relationships going, and that nothing will go wrong. That feeling of having it all under control is also fueled by the partial inhibition of the prefrontal cortex caused by dopamine and adrenaline. In short, the brain can be split between two contradictory motivations: protecting the emotional bond with their partner and satisfying the immediate impulse for novelty and validation. This doesn't excuse the betrayal, but it helps explain why someone who genuinely loves their partner might still cross that line. Now that we understand how the brain can hold love and desire for novelty at the same time, it's important to look beyond biology, because behind infidelity, there's almost always an emotional story driving the behavior. Many people who cheat carry deep emotional voids. They may feel invisible, undervalued, or emotionally disconnected, even if their partner loves them. Instead of expressing those needs and working through them within the relationship, they try to fill the void elsewhere, as if another person could restore that feeling of wholeness and meaning. Personal insecurity also plays a big role. People with low self-esteem or those who rely heavily on external validation may turn to infidelity to feel desired, attractive, or important, as though the experience proves they're still worthy. Attachment style also matters. Those who grew up with anxious or avoidant attachment often struggle to trust, fear abandonment, and feel the need to keep their options open, which increases the likelihood of seeking control or security outside the relationship. Past experiences and personal beliefs shape this behavior too. Someone who grew up in an environment where infidelity was normalized, or where self-worth depended on external approval, may see cheating not as a conscious betrayal, but as an acceptable way to meet unmet needs. Understanding these psychological and emotional factors doesn't excuse the damage, but it helps reveal that beneath the betrayal are wounds, insecurities, and unconscious patterns driving the behavior. And that brings up another key question. What happens in the brain and mind of someone after they've betrayed? How do they process the guilt, the secret, and the consequences? After the act, it's not just the relationship that changes. The cheater's brain does too. Even if they try to justify or minimize what happened, their nervous system responds to the internal conflict. One of the first effects is guilt, which activates the same brain regions associated with social and emotional pain. The brain perceives the transgression as a threat to its own sense of who I am, which triggers a cascade of uncomfortable emotions: shame, anxiety, fear of being discovered. Guilt and prolonged stress increase cortisol levels, the stress hormone. This excess cortisol can lead to insomnia, muscle tension, difficulty concentrating, and even digestive issues. For the brain, keeping a big secret and living in fear of the consequences keeps the body in a constant state of alert. After cheating, the brain also starts to reinterpret the relationship with the partner. In some cases, the person projects their guilt outward, justifying their actions by seeing their partner as responsible for their dissatisfaction, which deepens emotional distance. In other cases, the betrayal confronts them with what they truly feel, sparking a renewed appreciation for their partner and a desire to repair the damage. Either way, the brain experiences a state of dissonance. It knows it acted against its values, but seeks ways to ease the discomfort by denying, justifying, or sometimes confessing. This mental and emotional state can last weeks or months, affecting not only their health, but also their ability to make clear decisions and rebuild or not the relationship. If, after experiencing the emotional, physical, and relational consequences of cheating, many people swear they'll never do it again, why do some end up falling into the same pattern over and over? The answer lies in how their brain and their beliefs handle reward, attachment, and emotional regulation. On one hand, the brain's reward system continues to associate infidelity with intense gratification, novelty, validation, pleasure. Each secret encounter triggers dopamine, creating a powerful positive reinforcement. And as with any addictive behavior, this feeling becomes a kind of escape from routine or emotional emptiness. For people with an insecure attachment style, those who fear rejection but also fear true intimacy, cheating can feel like a way to maintain control. They seek closeness without fully committing because they're afraid of the vulnerability that comes with a deep connection. Past experiences and personal beliefs also play a huge role. If someone grew up in an environment where infidelity was normalized or even celebrated, their brain may have integrated that behavior as acceptable or even inevitable. There's also the factor of emotional disconnection from oneself. When someone doesn't know how to manage their anxiety, emptiness, or boredom in a healthy way, infidelity becomes a shortcut to temporarily fill those cracks. Finally, repetition is more likely when there's no real internal work. When the damage isn't reflected on, repaired, or the underlying cause is faced, the brain simply falls back into the same automatic pattern when it encounters vulnerability again. That's why breaking this cycle isn't just about willpower. It requires reprogramming beliefs, training new ways to regulate emotions, and learning how to build intimacy without sabotaging it. Which brings us to the final reflection. Can the brain and the relationship heal after infidelity? Is it really possible to recover? The answer is yes, but it takes commitment, time, and conscious work to reprogram both emotions and beliefs. First, on an individual level, it's essential to let the brain process the experience. The pain, mistrust, and guilt activate the amygdala and keep the body in a constant state of alert. That's why learning to regulate the nervous system through breathing, mindfulness, exercise, therapy helps calm the emotions and regain mental clarity. Then comes the phase of truly understanding what happened. It's not just about pointing fingers, but about exploring the unmet needs, the emotional gaps, and the dynamics that contributed to the distance. For the one who cheated, it's crucial to recognize the real motivations, take responsibility, and commit to changing the patterns that led them there. As a couple, rebuilding starts with creating a safe space to talk, expressing emotions without aggression, listening without interrupting, bringing the wounds and the unmet needs to the table. This doesn't mean justifying the harm, but understanding it in order to repair it. And trust doesn't return overnight. It's a process of consistency, small actions, and sustained honesty. Every act of integrity helps the other person's brain begin to feel safe again. And over time, the neural pathways that associate the partner with betrayal can be rewired to associate them again with care and respect. Sometimes, professional help is essential. Individual or couples therapy provides tools to manage emotions and break destructive cycles. And finally, it's important to remember that even if the relationship doesn't continue, healing from within is still possible and necessary. The goal isn't just to fix the relationship, but to rebuild yourself, to learn to choose consciously, and to regain the ability to love without fear. Because the brain has an incredible capacity to adapt and overcome wounds, as long as we give it the right conditions to do so. Infidelity doesn't just hurt the heart, it also rewires the mind and emotions. But the brain can heal, reprogram itself, and learn to trust again. Whether that means rebuilding the relationship or rebuilding yourself. Remember, your well-being doesn't depend on what was done to you, but on what you choose to do from here on out. If this video helped you understand what your mind already suspected, share it, subscribe, and let us know about your experience in the comments. Because knowledge doesn't just inform, it also heals, transforms, and sometimes even saves. See you in the next video, Neurocurious Minds.